All right, players and coaches, this little tip is pretty simple and straightforward, but I think it's important that how we talk about the game um, is controlled and we're careful with it. So when we typically discuss golf swings, we tend to use a lot of golf jargon, which I'm really not a fan of. And the longer I teach, the more I try to get away from typical golf lingo and language. Things like swing down, swing up, you're doing too much of this, too much of that, swing to the right, swing to the left, over the top, underneath. Like all those types of things can be very confusing for players and typically don't get translated the same from player to player. So want to make sure that your players are actually doing what it is that you want them to do and that you're dialoguing about the same thing. So what I've got on here, you may or may not be able to see it on video, but is I have club face tape on this one and Dr. Scholl's foot spray on this one. And the real big thing to discuss with players, regardless of the instructor's swing style, the player's swing style, or preferences, is discussing where the low point of the swing happens. So when we talk about swinging up on the driver, for instance, we're talking about the low point happens before the club gets to the golf ball. That's what makes the club swing up. How you do that, there's a bajillion different ways to do that, but players will often do it maybe in a way that you don't want them to, even if you tell them how to do so. So we talk all about controlling the low point. So in this case, I love having players, regardless of skill, hit golf balls with club face tape on or foot spray. So I'm going to use the club face tape option. And if a player hits a ball off the toe, we typically will talk about, do this, do that, do this, do that. It's like, well, let's just get it out of the center. What is happening to the club? So if a ball is struck off the toe of the club here, Zach, you can move around this way. If a ball is struck off the toe, then something is causing their low point of their golf swing to move closer to them. It could be a slew of different reasons for that. If it gets hit off the heel, then something is causing their low point to move away from them. So it's all about controlling the low point. It's not just like hit it on the heel, hit it on the toe. The low point or of the arc of the swing, because it's on an arc that's tilted, is to get it out of the center. So we've got to control where that center is. If a shot is hit fat, right? So if I hit the ground before I get to the golf ball, like that, then for them that's understanding that their low point has moved somehow behind the golf ball, or the low point has occurred before the club gets to the ball. Now the trickiest one of all is this, is the thin shot or top shot, which is typically used as I pick my head up, lift it up on it. Well, it could be that you have a low point that's too far back. So the low point occurred before you got to the ball and the club swinging up through the ball. It could just occur because the club's too far away from the ground, which would be that one. Or it could occur because the low point is too far forward, in which case, had the club reached the ground, it would have reached the ground after contact with the golf ball. So that one's the hardest one to talk about and control. But it's really important to me, and the longer that I teach, that you discuss the game correctly, which is where is the low point? Stop talking about the body. Get into what is happening with the club first and foremost. Because if we can't do that, then we're in trouble. So, and the last one would be, if you don't hit it out of the center of the club face, so I'm going to hopefully hit this one on the toe. So that ball flew really straight. But as you can see from impact there, that ball got hit on the toe. Here's the problem with discussing ball flight. We don't actually know what that club face did if we don't have technology. And even then it can be a little bit finicky. A ball that's out of the center of the face allows you to evaluate what the golf ball did from left to right and high and low. If it is not hit out of the center, then we can't evaluate that. A toe strike like that, even small variations from there, can create all sorts of different shots. This time it happened to go straight. But a very, very similar strike to that, the ball can move a little right, or the ball could curve to the left depending on the severity of the strike and how the club presents itself at impact. So it's very, very difficult to start talking about lefts and rights and go, oh, that was a good one, when in reality the ball wasn't out of the center of the club face. We want to make sure that we're discussing good, solid strikes first and foremost. So it's all about controlling the low point. Talk with yourself, talk with your buddies, talk with your players about controlling where the low point was. If you can do that, you're going to find the center of the club face a whole lot more often, and the discussion with yourself and with other players is going to be far more effective, far more correct in terms of understanding what's really happening while you're swinging the golf club. So take this with you. I think it's great. I think it's the best way to really talk about the game. I hope you do too.